Hi friends, it's Terry Gaines. In this video, I'm going to share all the details to create this beautiful star book. I used the Favorite Flowers Designer Series paper, which was one of Stampin' Up's January through February celebration offerings. You can use any designer series paper or any product to embellish your card. The star book has 6 individual cards, that openings, and you can decorate these, as I mentioned, with any of your favorite product. I use the designer series paper to decorate the card, and then I used a stylish shaped dies for my banners. And the stamp set I use for all my sentiments is the Hydrangea Haven stamp set, which is in the annual catalog. I love all the sentiments for this in that stamp set, and it works great for this particular project, but you can use any of your favorite sentiments. So to start out, I'm going to give you all the measurements for the product or for the materials. You need 6 book cardstock. They're 8.5 by 5.5, and you score them at 4 1/4 or fold them in half. Then you need 6 star cardstock. These are 8 by 5 1/4, scored at 2 5/8, at 4, and at 5 3/8. You need 6 of those all together. I'm using basic white for both of those. For the cover cardstock, you need quantity 2. These are 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I'm using basic white for the back. And then for the sample I'm sharing with you, I have pale papaya. For the completed sample, I have fresh freesia. It depends on the element for the cover of the cards for the project. So I have pale papaya for mine. Then you need a cardstock layer. Now this is optional. I'm layering this black on top of this because it just pops out the black from the elements of the paper. And also, if you don't cut straight and your black border isn't even, the black behind that just camouflages any imperfections. But what I also did was I texturized mine. I texturized my basic black with the Pretty Flowers embossing folder, but you can use any embossing folder if you want to duplicate this project. So these are for the cover. And then you need designer series paper. I've designed the measurements for the star and the designer series paper. If you follow the measurements for my star cardstock, need to be 2 3/8 by 5. The reason I picked 2 3/8, I can get 5 of them across a 12 by 12 sheet of paper and 10 per sheet. So I have each of those 6 double-sided prints already cut. You need a ribbon for the book. I'm using the 1/4 inch crinkled ribbon. You need a thin ribbon, and this works great. You don't want to use a thick ribbon for creating for this project. And then you need decorative elements. I already mentioned I'm using the designer series paper for the elements. And then I've got the stylish shaped dies plus a die from the Hydrangea dies, and I am using the Hydrangea Haven stamp set. So for the tools that we need, I suggest that you strongly suggest a bone folder, paper snips to cut out all the elements. You can use your take your pick tool, and I'm going to use my craft mat. I'm going to use my Stamparatus for aligning the book, and then I would suggest a strong adhesive. I'm using Seal Plus for part of the book, and then I'm using my regular seal for the rest of the book. So to get started, we want to get our card. We want to start out with the book. So each of these book cardstocks you want to fold in half and crease with your bone folder, or you can score them and crease those. So all 6 of these you want to crease with the bone folder and have them meet up. To save some time, I've got the other 5 done already. And then for the star cardstock, you want that first fold to be a valley fold, then a mountain fold, then a valley fold. So you're going to create a fold like this. What you need to do is take this and crease it with a bone folder, making sure that you align up straight on the top and the bottom. So, and then here and here. If they don't meet up right here, that's okay. We've got room to build in some tolerances, so we don't have to worry about that. But I crease those so they're nice and crisp like that. And to save some video time, I have the other 5 done already. So to assemble the book, I find it best to bring in my my Stamparatus or a Simply Scoring tool for this corner edge for your alignment. What we want to do is take these book cardstock and we want to put cover to cover and get those all 6 adhered together. I find it best to use this to get my alignment straight. The other thing I want to share is I use a strong adhesive. I'm going to use the Seal Plus. And when I put the adhesive on this book, I am not going to, this cardstock, I'm not going to put it close to this folded edge. The reason I'm not doing that is we want this to expand. We don't want to put the adhesive really close to the edge. Otherwise, the book will do this. We want to give it some relief here. So I'm going to make sure that when I put that adhesive on this edge, I'm going to stay about a ½ inch away or so. And then the rest of the book, or I call it a book, the rest of that cardstock, I'm just putting my traditional amount of adhesive. I'm going to put the open end up to the corner or to the edge, put that into the corner, make sure you have the open end, and then you're going to place that and let it drop onto the adhesive. That's going to let you get that alignment really good. Then you're going to put adhesive on the next one. Now the beauty of this video, if I'm going too fast and you're trying to create this project at the very same time, you can hit the pause button and finish your portion of it until you are caught up to where I am for the next step. So I'm not going to pause, I'm just going to keep going. So I've got 3 of them adhered, and then what I do is I just keep continuing until I have all 6 of them adhered. I'm keeping about a ½ inch away. That's going to allow that spacing for the book to expand right there. And then I'm going to bring that down. As I mentioned, this helps out with alignment. I just put this next one on. It didn't quite get straight. I was not holding it in there quite well, but I'm going to continue. Always make sure you have your open end and you're meeting up your folds. So as I mentioned, there's some tolerances built in for misalignment on some of this book. So here we have the open end, put that into the corner, and this is the last page. So now I'm going to adhere that. So other than that one little oops, I got a little misalignment there, but I'm going to continue with the book. We've got all 6 of those adhered together. Now we don't need the Stamparatus or the scoring or the Simply Scoring for the rest of the book. So like I mentioned, if you're not to this point, just hit that pause button until you get to this point, and then we'll continue to the next. So now what we want to do is we want to insert these into the book. I start on the very back page and start with that book. Then what you want to make sure that it gets adhered in this fashion, so end to end. But what I've done with my measurements is I've allowed some equal spacing on the side. I didn't make this identical in height because then we'd have to match everything up perfect. I cut it down smaller, so we have an 1/8 inch border on the bottom and the top and on the end. Now I'm still going to continue with my Seal Plus, and I'm going to just put my adhesive in my corners like I normally would. It's a strong enough adhesive, you don't need to cover the entire piece. Now what I'm going to do, as I mentioned, is line up equal spacing on the top and the bottom and that one end. And then I'm going to let that fall into place. Now I've adhered that piece. Now what I'm going to do is put adhesive on this panel. Find it easier to rotate the project. Now I'm going to close the entire book. I'm not just going to close one page. That's going to give me some misalignment. I'm going to close the entire book, put some pressure down on it. Now that piece has adhered right where I want it to be. I'm going to open up to the next to the back page. I always like starting at the very back and working my way to the front. At this point, we don't have a top or bottom or a front or back identified in the book, but we I like to start in the back. I'm looking for equal spacing, top, bottom, and edge, placing that down. Then I can put my adhesive on this piece. And now, as I mentioned, I'm going to close the entire book. So I'm going to keep on going on this, and if you are creating your book at the same time, you hit the pause button if I'm going faster than you are assembling. That way, that's the beauty of the video. You can pause it to get your portion done. So as I mentioned, we just want to keep doing this. I did not do this prep ahead of time, and I'm just going to keep moving along. It is important, like I mentioned, to close the entire book. That way you get it placed in the right location. And I have 3 more to do. And now I do want to share some tips on this. I have shared this project at some of my local technique events, and I get questions, for example, what about adhering designer series paper to these star cardstock before we attach them to the book? It seems like that would be easier. The reason I don't do that is if I get something misaligned, because I'm blindly attaching this backside, if that piece isn't straight, I created the book cards. Let me rephrase that. I used the same color cardstock for the book cardstock and the star cardstock. So if things don't line up perfectly, it is camouflaged, and nobody's going to see that difference. So also, if it's not misaligned, or if it is misaligned and your paper is already on this piece, it's going to be obvious because of the contrast between the cardstock and the designer series paper. Your eye is going to go right to that misaligned paper. And we'll talk about the designer series paper for the very next step. So let me finish this very last one. I could have saved some video time by doing all of this ahead of time, but I just wanted to complete the entire book in the video and let you utilize the pause if you need to. So the last one here, and now I'm going to close this book. Now what that's done is that put that star in there at all the places we wanted it to be. And now we have our book ready to decorate with the designer series paper. So right now, as I mentioned, we don't have top or bottom, front or back. And once we start adding the designer series paper, we are going to be identifying that. So for the designer series paper, I'm using the same paper for the double-sided paper for the opening. Now what I do want to look at, how I cut it, which one do I want this side of the paper shown, and which one do I want this side of the paper shown? Well, you can't go wrong with either one, but I'm going to look at my, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my paper on like this. So now this is where the paper alignment, so I'm going to put my adhesive, I'm going to switch to my seal. I don't need the stronger adhesive for this portion of the project. And now when I put this paper on, what I'm going to do is, it is smaller in height than the star cardstock. So I'm going to look at equal spacing. I'm going to look at equal spacing from the outside cardstock, from the book cardstock. And then what I'm going to do is look for equal spacing on the top and the bottom and on the end. And then I'm going to place that down. And for example, equal spacing from the edge of the designer series paper to the edge of the book, edge to edge, edge to edge. And I'm letting this end fall into place. And now that I put this on, if this white cardstock wasn't straight right here, it's camouflage. Nobody would notice that. So make sure you align it to the edge of the book. And as I mentioned, I'm doing the front and back. So I'm going to put my adhesive on the next piece of designer series paper. And let me use this side. And look for equal spacing on the top, bottom, and edge. And let this end fall into place. So that's the first page. I'm going to embellish this first page with this flower. And if I put the flower on just as it was, it's going to stick out the book a little bit. So what I want to do is bend one of these leaves. And now when I attach this, I want to make sure I have no exposed adhesive on this end. So I'm going to bring in my craft mat and put some adhesive. And I'm just going to look at this and know that if I put it in this area, I should be in a safe location. Also make sure that the element doesn't stick out the top. So I'm going to put that fold in here, and then I'm going to close the book to help adhere that. So I've attached one element here. The first element I'm going to put in for a sentiment is "To an Incredible Woman." Now these sentiments are going to be perfect for a mother, aunt, a sister, a good friend. So I have that decorated, but like I mentioned, maybe I forgot to mention, you can add photos or other elements to your card or to your star book. The next page I'm going to use this designer series paper, and let's see, they're identical. So I'm going to put this one on first. Now, as I mentioned, you are going to be able to use any of your designer series papers to recreate this. And so I'm going to put this one on. Then I'm going to put this one on next. Now I cut, as you notice, that last banner that I put on, I cut that banner. And I cut it to the size for my sentiment, so it is short enough, it's not sticking out the end. For this next banner I'm going to embellish the card with, I did not cut it. And when you use a full banner from this, the largest banner, if you put it right on there, it's going to stick out the top. So we do need to fold this one. And I'm going to just fold that. I'm not bringing in the simply scoring. I'm going to just fold it between some of the words there. And then I'm going to place that one in. Again, you need to make sure you have no exposed adhesive. What you can do is place that down, kind of have a visual with your fingers where you can put the adhesive, so it is not exposed. Then I'm going to push the corner or the score line into that element and then close the book. So we have that element. Now what I'm going to do is put this flower on this side. And as I mentioned, you just need to make sure you have no exposed adhesive. So I'm going to just put some of the adhesive here and place that down, and just feel with your fingers to make sure you have no exposed adhesive. And let me put some pressure on that to get that adhere. So that's the next page. On the next page, I'm going to use this designer series paper print. I'm going to put the floral on this side, and I'm going to put the background on this side. And as I mentioned more than once, that you can use different papers for this. And there's so many beautiful designer series papers that you can use. Again, watch for equal spacing from the edge of the book to the edge of the paper. And here's a good example. My misalignment on my white cardstock, if you can see that in the video, is camouflaged by the designer series paper. So that's why we would not want to put the designer series paper on that cardstock first. So I'm hoping that you are enjoying this project and thinking about different papers and elements that you can use for decorating it. So we have that. So for this one, I want to use this flower image. And again, that's going to stick out the book when you close it. So we want to fold some of those elements. So I'm just going to pick a location like here. Then I'm going to have the leaves wrap onto the background paper. And then when I visually put this down, I can see that I'm good with that entire flower, and just a little bit adhesive behind here will work. So I'm using just my seal adhesive. I'm not using the stronger adhesive. Fold it, place that into the corner, and allow it to adhere to both sides. And close it a little bit, that's going to help. So this time I'm going to put this little banner here, and you just need to make sure you have no exposed adhesive. I'm telling you that at every book page I decorate, just because that's important. If you had adhesive back there, you close the book, you've adhered it to this panel or the opposite panel. So we're getting halfway done decorating. The next paper I'm going to use is this paper, and I'm going to have this paper, and then I'll put that side. So that's a beauty of designer series paper. It's so pretty on both sides. This is going to showcase both sides of the paper if you create it like I have. Again, look for equal spacing on the 3 edges. Let this one fall into place, and it should all work out good. Let's see. And then I'm going to rotate this one. So we have that. For this page, I'm putting this little greenery or floral piece on. Now, as I mentioned, you can add other elements. You can put more elements on yours. I'm just, to be honest with you, I maybe did not share. Each of the floral images are from the designer series paper, but they're just one floral image from each available one in the papers. That's how I design the card, but you can add a bigger or more elements to the card. So this is the next page I'm going to use. For this one, I put the floral image on this side. I just want to double check. I think they're identical. I'm going to put the background on this side, and you can change that up also. There is no wrong way to do this book, and I'm kind of hurrying along because I almost wish I would have did some of this prep work ahead of time, but there we go. And then it's hard to tell, and there's no wrong way to do this, which is the top and which is the bottom of the designer series paper, but there is no wrong on that. And let's see here, that's the flower I'm going to use. Now I used one element from each of the floral images on that paper, with the exception of this page. This page of the paper, you have these 2 flowers on there, or you also have the purples on there. So in this scenario, I'm using this flower image, and I'm going to place that one up on the top here, like so. So my leaves hang over, so I can put adhesive behind the flower portion. And then I'm going to put You Make Me Smile. And this one is going to go right here. And I'm just going to push that down to get some to help burnish that. And here's the last page. The last page is using this print, and I'm going to put, let's see, I'm going to put that print on that side and that print on that side. And this is using the largest flower on that designer series paper print, so I need to also fold that. So as I mentioned, got that. Just love this paper. I love the richness of the colors that Stampin' Up! Used. And this is the last one here. So here, as you can see, I have some misalignment, but it's all going to be camouflaged because I'm looking for equal spacing from the designer series paper to the edge, not to that star cardstock. So this last one, as I mentioned, this larger flower is too big. It's going to pop out if I just attach that. So what I want to do is take, and I'm just going to fold this like so, and put some adhesive on the back of that. I'm going to place this. I'm going to push that fold up to the fold. Let that adhere. And this last banner, I left enough space that you can sign your name and place that right in here. So that's all of the pages for the book. And when it opens up, it's going to sit on the table or a shelf and display all 6 of those at the same time. Now we're going to do the cover. The reason we do the cover last is we want all that bulk in there. We want this book to be as thick as it's going to be, so we can determine our thickness for the spine of the book. So what we have left is we have our cover material, so we can adhere these 2 cardstock together and use your favorite adhesive to do this. And I like looking at opposite corners for the spacing on each side of the corner. That way I can get my equal spacing all around. This is the front cover, and our ribbon is going to be our closure. How I do this is I take and I put a couple strips of adhesive on my cover. I find the center of my ribbon, and then I put the center right here. I let in equal spacing top and bottom, and I adhere that ribbon to those 2 pieces of adhesive. That's going to hold it in place. Then I can put my adhesive on the back of the cardstock. And now my measurements only gives you a 1/16 of an inch border. So I want to make sure I've got so I'm going to look for that equal spacing, just a small equal spacing, and then drop this cover into place. Now I have the front cover. Now we want to make sure we let this, don't push that so tight. You want to give a little bit of give right, or you want to keep this loose here. You don't want it too tight. And this is where the thin ribbon comes in handy. I wouldn't use a thick burlap type ribbon. It's going to be too thick for this type of project. Now I just have the white for the back, and I'm going to use my regular adhesive. I'm going to look for equal spacing. And got the cover. That is how we're going to bind or close the book with the ribbon. And then what I did ahead of time is I put some dimensionals on this element. I would suggest not to use dimensionals for the inside part of the book. That's going to add too much bulkness. But dimensionals on the cover, I don't think are a problem. It's just a little bit of a thickness and shouldn't be any problem. So what I'm going to do is just attach this on the cover, and then I added a little bit of baker's twine to the little tag. This tag is from the hydrangea dies, and then I'm just going to add this right here. And now you can tie that closed, or then you can open it up and tie it here so it displays on the table. I hope you enjoyed this project. As I mentioned, you can use any designer series paper. For this one, I use all the same measurements, and I use the Rain or Shine Designer Series paper in the mini catalog, and I created this fun book using the different Designer Series papers and the different elements. And if you are interested in duplicating these, I will have a PDF you can download from my blog that will give you the measurements. And for this one, I use the farm dies that are in the mini catalog, and I created a farm counting book. Now I did do something different here, and I'll provide it. This measurement was bigger, so I could have a larger panel here. So my star is smaller. When you look at the top of the book, you can see the star elements are shorter here and bigger here. You can change that measurement to be whatever you want it to be for your project. So this is kind of like a Where's Waldo in the farming theme. Because I have a counting book here. So you open it up and find 1 windmill on this page. You can find 2 cows on that page. You can find 3 pigs on that page, 4 geese, 5 bunnies, and 6 ducks. And I use the celebration paper for this other panel here. But this creates a fun book that you can create for a gift. And as I mentioned, go to my blog and you can download PDFs that will give you the photos of these 3 different books. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I would love to have you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for stopping by. Take care and happy creating.